Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm very happy to see you. Thank you for joining me today in my new show, sponsored by Beams. Marin, could you please tell me a bit briefly how you related to the event industry, what you're doing in the events, something like that?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your invite. And so good to see this new format. Looking very much forward to it. Doing a great job here. A little bit about me. Like, I never imagined that I would end up in the event industry, to be honest. Um, I've done a lot of things in my life, like anything under the moon, from delivering mail to setting up, building the stages more or less, and the different stands that you had there, to like marketing, sales, like everything under the sun. Um, but I remember, like, I really love music, and when in the early days, among my friends, I was pretty much the dedicated DJ for every friend's party or birthday party, whatever you could think of. If there was music needed, I should be there. And that kind of sparked the idea for me to organize my own event,
Mm-hmm.
to just invite my friends and everyone that I knew. I was like, I'm gonna make it so big, and so many people are gonna come. Didn't turn out really the event I was imagining it should be, but I learned a lot from just organizing that event, and kind of took a while before I ended up in the event industry after that. As I mentioned, I done some things in the meanwhile, but eventually I ended up at the physical event company Solar Plaza. In
Mm-hmm.
essence, to find ways how they could make a different approach on how the value of the packages for their sponsorships at that time was shown, and how they could find different ways to add more value, and therefore also be able to raise the price, obviously, in a way that actually justified raising the price. So not just saying like, oh, now it's going to be a higher price, but actually find ways how can you really build up in the value. And that's pretty much where I really started to get into the event industry. Learned a lot from that company, and obviously, when I was working there, all of a sudden there was a pandemic happening,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole company, every event was physical, and the biggest event of the year was due in 2 weeks, when the lockdown happened, the first one. And there was pretty much no answer to how are we going to deal with it other than postpone, postpone, postpone. But that would mean that 2 million of sponsorship value would be, yeah, they would want to get their money back. So how can we find a way to retain that sponsorship value, because otherwise it's going to be end of story. That's where I started to think about virtual events, how to put it in a way that actually makes sense. Because the first idea was, oh, let's just put it on Zoom. But I quickly realized that also by talking to the sponsors, yeah, that kind of takes away, because like you don't have a networking, they don't have a booth, nothing to really show themselves. So how can we make it a little bit more than just a Zoom call? And in 2 weeks, we actually found a solution together with the event app that they were working with at the moment. And pretty much the rest is history. Since then, I started because there was another company that asked, like, "Oh, you did this for Solar Plaza. Can you also do that for me?" And then I decided, like, okay, maybe working for someone isn't per se the best thing I can do, especially not if I want to help as much event organizers as possible. So I started my own company, and since then I've been helping physical event companies to transition to virtual. Has been a very interesting journey. I've seen quite some difference between execution and how you could do it. Learned a lot from the industry as well. And the past 6 months or so, I've been getting in touch with all the event professionals to see what is the biggest challenge at the moment, and how can we find a way to make life easier for event professionals, because it has been hectic enough craziness going on. It's time for some extra good news. So that's where I started to work on Event Mender, where we actually help event professionals that are struggling with the overwhelm of all the platforms that are out there and all the options, and that are also constantly updating their features to find the best match for their event goals, rather than that they have to look through all of the internet and all the solutions out there. So that's quite a long story, but how I rolled into events and where I am currently at.
Yeah, very interesting experience. And so you like virtual events more than physical, or?
Good question. Good question. Um, Not per se. Like the human aspect is something that obviously we are all missing, but I like the efficiency of it, and I like the way that you can think outside of the box that currently was there for a physical event, in terms of what was possible, how you could interact with your customers, what kind of things you can track. Like the endless opportunities that are out there, that really gets me excited. I also am quite a big tech fan, so in that sense, yeah, it's true to my heart. But yeah, I think you cannot really compare a physical event with a virtual event. There are obviously
Mhm.
some things that overlap, but meeting someone in person is really different than meeting them online. Although you can, come as close to an in-person meeting as possible, even with like metaverse solutions and everything in 3D, it will never be like a real in-person interaction. And I think I'm very much a social animal. I love to get in touch with people, love to be amongst the people. And that kind of buzz of being in a big crowd, yeah, we still have to find a way how to do that in a virtual solution. But in that sense, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be. I think both of them have their strength, and depending on what your event goal is and what you try to achieve, either or can be the best solution for what you're trying to achieve.
So you think physical events have a future too? It's not a relic yet.
Um, I think the question is what kind of future that is, but I don't think they will ever go away. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, However, in terms of virtual events, could you tell me about the best virtual event you've ever visited?
Um, there are quite some good examples out there. I think I really like the event that Adobe did quite a while back. I think they're very good in their marketing, but also in the way they positioned their sessions. It was very diverse. There was a lot going on, so for everyone there was a session that they would love to interact with. But that was mainly on the content. Like Event MB also does that very well. They know how to mix up sessions and, for instance, make in between a session that actually there's someone who does a small exercise so you can get out of your chair and actually start moving like that. Um, Good example to also, do it a little bit different is like making that summary on a kind of a small visualization of what that person has said in the past 20 minutes or so. They keep their sessions quite short. So yeah, there are quite some examples of really good events. The best event out there, best virtual event. I'm not sure. I think every event has a few very good things, but also still there's always room to improve. So would like to keep that an open question. Um, like I also very much like the creativity that goes into a more 3D space, and there are some companies that really do that in a very good way and very good execution. But it also makes it a little bit difficult sometimes in terms of how much power it takes from your computer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like every event has very good things, but there are every now and then some bad things, and there are obviously also events that are not able to nail any of them. But I think we're still in a slightly experimental phase where people are also trying to figure out what is the standard that we actually need, um, and what works, what doesn't. And I think this is a very good thing, because if we don't keep trying and keep experimenting, then we fall into our old habits of kind of the past 100 years or so, where like um, I saw this talk of a guy who mentioned that he had four pictures of like 1960 to 90 or 2020, and then like from every decade, so every 10 years, and then he showed a random photo, and then he was like, can you tell me which one of those different decades this was? And people were like, ah, I don't know, could be 1960, could be 2000, could be 2018. um, there was, yeah, so much a standard, and everyone just executed that specific standard, because why would you change a winning recipe, but
Mm-hmm.
therefore it kind of lacked the experimentation and the creativity that we see very much right now. And I think that's something we should not lose. So it, like, not being able to have that perfect event, I think it's actually a good thing, because that means that you can still strive for something higher, rather than be like, oh, we we have done everything that we could and that's it, so we will now for the next 5 years do exactly the same.
Yeah, very important to develop, yeah, in every area and in events too, of course. And you said the visual component is very important. What we see, how do we feel like in metaverse? It looks like more realistic. And let's have some examples. What you were impressed, apart from visual components, probably any technical solutions or any other wow moments, as you said in your LinkedIn post. Yeah.
Yeah, like wow moments can be like super small. Like one event I was in, like there
Mm-hmm.
was someone who just had a baby, and then they were like, oh, let's bring the baby on stage, and everyone was like, oh, so cute. Like, it's super small, but it will stay top of mind for a long time, because like it's something that a lot of people are like feeling empathy for, and be like, oh, you're doing so amazing, like that already sticks with people. But um another company that I know for quite a long time, they actually have like this earthquake moment where you have just a random introduction of the event, welcome everyone, and then like all of a sudden the whole platform starts like falling apart, and everyone in the event is like, whoa, what's happening, what's going on? And then there's like this big teaser of like maybe the main sponsor, or you know an even bigger introduction, which is a very fun way to play with the environment you have, that really stays with people. Like, they will definitely remember that part, no matter how good the event was. That is something that they will remember, just because it was completely different than something they have seen before. It was unexpected. And I think there are quite some examples of it. But yeah, in general, I think, as I mentioned, like 3D things, I'm quite impressed with how far they gotten, and I very much enjoy to walk through an environment, or like it's more like a Sims experience, like it's not really fully immersive, or at least not for me, because I'm not in a VR headset mode. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
like that, but yeah, it can be very playful as well, because you can interact with everything. You can pick up digital items or virtual items. For me, that's because I love technology, and I like what people are able to accomplish in a virtual space. So then I'm like, oh wow, that was a very good example of how you could do it. I wouldn't say it's for everyone on Wow Moment, but that's also knowing your audience, and knowing what would trigger them and what would be very special for them, and making sure you implement that. And if I'm your audience, then you have me with like a super cool environment where I can click on everything. But depends who you would like to target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. I've talked to one of our colleagues from the event industry yesterday, and we talked exactly about the importance of the audience, and about that some organizers forget about who was a target to. So yeah, let's talk about what organizers do wrong. Which mistakes you see at the events?
Well, I think what we just mentioned, like
Yeah,
targeting the right
yeah.
audience, that's already something that not everyone gets still up until this point. They're just like, yeah, this is an event for everyone, um,
Hmm.
which kind of means that yeah, there will always be one person that loves it, but there will always be a lot of people that don't love it because like you can only um, kind of customize your experience for well, maybe a handful of different target audiences, but definitely not for everyone in the world. And I think that's kind of a big challenge. I think another thing that we see a lot is just I understand if you are on a budget that you have to be very creative on how you do it, but that for me it doesn't mean that that should take away from the quality of the experience that your attendees are going to have. And I think sometimes it actually comes at a cost of your attendees. And then for me, I would ask like, are there not other ways like maybe you can ask all your attendees for even like €1 extra, and then you would be able to actually get to the quality that is needed to really wow that audience rather than that they're like, yeah, the topic may have been interested if they actually nailed down their audience and they knew who they were talking to and what they were interested in. But then, yeah, quality is also very important, especially in a time where you have sometimes 3 or 4 virtual events going on in the same day, and that's just for me as a person.
Hmm.
And not even talking about how many events are going on in all the different industries at all the different time zones in the whole world. I think, yeah, there are quite a lot taking place every day, all the time. Then, yeah, if you are lagging behind just on the quality of your content, that can really make that people are like, oh, yeah, even if it was a great topic, that they don't feel fulfilled after your event. Another thing is definitely the engagement. There are a lot of ways how you can approach engagement. Like I can talk with you, and let's say someone in the audience has a question, then we can
Hmm.
engage them by, answering them their question, and that is something that I like as well when I'm in the audience. That when I ask a question and the person actually brings it up to the screen, I feel like yeah, they answered my question. It gives you a good feeling, and if that kind of interaction is not there, um, that is a miss, and that's something you already see. Although most of the people now understand that having a poll and a Q&A kind of makes a lot of sense, so let's just do it. But you can take that a step further, like bring someone onto the stage, for instance. Some platforms have that feature where you kind of can raise your hand as an attendee, and then the speaker can bring that person onto the stage. That also allows for fishbowl formats where you kind of have 2 or 3 panelists, and then you as an audience can be part of that panel, take the empty seat that's
Hmm.
there, and then actually one of the panelists leaves and goes into the audience, so someone else of the audience can take that seat. And that really makes it so much more interactive. And if you are part of the content that's being shown, that's also a very big wow moment. It's not just the fact that you feel seen and you feel part of what's going on, but it also really stays in your memory. It stays top of mind because you're like, oh, in this event, I was actually able to also become a speaker. Depends also on your audience. If you have a very introvert audience, most likely they wouldn't like to be on stage, but then a Q&A or a poll is a very great option to still have them heard without being visually in the audience. And yeah, engagement also in the way of activating them to actually help you achieve your event goals. For instance, if you really need to have your sponsors a certain amount of leads, make sure you give your attendees a good incentive to actually go visit those sponsors rather than just saying like, here's your booth, good luck, that's it, and then say like, yeah, I gave you your visibility. Your sponsors are not going to be happy with it, but also your attendees, most likely those partners or sponsors that you have on your event, they have something that is very interesting for your audience, because otherwise they wouldn't be a sponsor of your event. So you're also kind of letting your audience miss out on being able to find what might be super helpful for them. um, and therefore, like, gamification is a good one. I think, a leaderboard, not per se saying that that is the most amazing thing you can do, but incentivizing them, even if it's just like, scoring points for, adding someone to your network, going to a certain booth, downloading a brochure, um, just giving them also the possibility to understand that it's there, not just fully pack your program and have 20 back-to-back sessions without any break, without any possibility to even visit those booths. Like, yeah, what do you expect if you put your program as full as possible? There's no room for your attendees if they're truly interested in the content that you're presenting, the knowledge that you're sharing. Then yeah, they will be hooked to those sessions and they won't do anything else. And if most of the time just sharing content and knowledge isn't the only event goal an event organizer has, they also have their sponsors, but they also would like to foster networking. And if there's only a handful of people in a networking module, whatever, it's like a one-on-one match or it's a round table, it takes away from that experience. So you really have to kind of cut out specific parts of your program specifically dedicated to those activations. But yeah, that's just a few examples. I hope I don't talk too much.
Mm. So to summarize, I could say that there are lots of options that event organizers can use, and our idea is to make them use it. It's the event becomes better when you use different options of interactivity and creativity, right?
Absolutely. And I think at the moment, there are a lot of event organizers that are very close to achieving all of it and having like a perfect mix. Um, I was talking with DJ Moulin, very interesting person within the event industry as well, and he brought up the analogy about that the virtual event, or any event actually, is more like a recipe. And you have to know which different ingredients you need, but you also need to know in what amount you need those ingredients, because if you're missing an ingredient, you have an ingredient too much, or the ratio of those ingredients isn't in the perfect order, then you will get a completely different end result, a completely different meal, or a completely different whatever you would like to bake with that recipe. Um, so yeah, I think that's very holds very true. And as I mentioned, like, we're still figuring out what the recipe book should look like, because there are multiple dishes that could work for different audiences, but every one of them needs to have quite a specific recipe in that recipe book. So I think we're still building it.
Very cool, and like yeah, okay. And I would say I'd like to get from you one advice that event organizers need in 2022. What could you advise?
Yeah, as I mentioned, although it seems super um, how do you say it, teasing, or like easy to just fall into old habits, as in like, oh, we did this event once and the MPS score was like not a 10 out of 10, but it was sufficient. Let's just keep it
Mhm.
like that, because like, it worked, and why would you change something that works? Always strive for that 10 out of 10, because it's going to be more and more important. And I think the last 2 years showed that those that strive to innovate, find new ways, stay open, and just test and play with whatever was possible, they kind of came out on top. But the
Mhm.
moment that you fall back into your old habits and be like, oh yeah, now that we have experimented a little bit, this is what it will be, and we're done with it, I would highly recommend to always keep being creative, keep finding new ways, because there's always something higher that you can achieve. Even if it's a 10 out of 10, go for the 11 out of 10, because you want to overachieve. You want to really show your audience that this is the event they have to be at, and you are the leader, the innovator. You will always come with something new that keeps your attendees always for the lookout for your next event, and that's what you want. And you don't want to become old news in 2 years, because maybe you're now ahead of the game. Don't fall into yeah the the old habits of yeah, now I've worked it out, I'm top of my game. Like, the moment you're standing still, especially with technology being exponential and like everything is accelerating, metaverse is around the corner. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, collaborate with others, yeah, and stay creative. It's not one tip, sorry, but I think it's very important.
I like a lot how you open to the new things and to developing. It's really cool, and it should get to the results. I think, yeah, very good advice for my opinion. Yeah, thank you so much. It was very interesting, and I believe event organizers will appreciate this advice and the insights you've used. So thank you so much. Very happy to have you here.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much. And yeah, if anyone wants to talk about these things, I'm more than happy to connect. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Just send me a direct message.
yeah,
And
me too. Find us on LinkedIn.
exactly, exactly. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's
Yeah,
help the event industry together.
yeah, thank you.